In the archives of myth, every era rewrites its gods to match its lighting. This week marks the beginning of new law order and a meditation on one of culture's subtlest revolutions. How the archetype once known as the witch, the widow, and the elder has now become the new face of authority and intellect. The crone, then, is not a demographic bound by age, but a decision. Sometimes 70, sometimes 37, and done apologising.
Sleep shall neither night nor day hang upon his penthouse lid. He shall live, a man forbid. Weary Sir Knights, 9 times 9, shall he dwindle, peak and pine.
Before she was a meme or a mood board, the crone was a cautionary tale. She lived at the edge of the woods and the story, barefoot, unbranded, inconvenient. Now she has a skincare line and a gallery residency. What we're seeing isn't simply the celebration of age, but the re-emergence of an archetype. The woman who has seen too much and is finally too tired to pretend otherwise.
Peace. The charms wound up.
Look long enough and you'll see her influence everywhere. Podcasts on slow living, essays on timelessness. The crone has infected the algorithm, ironically, by refusing it. She is the ghost in the machine that takes her time replying to your emails. Because to move slowly in this era is to be radical, so the crone becomes a symbol of refusal. An anti-influencer who would rather read a book. But aesthetic refusal is one thing. Sacred integration is another. Thailand has shown me that holiness hides in plain sight. Our spirit houses sit outside luxury shopping malls. Our monks carry smartphones wrapped in saffron while giving you blessings. The sacred is not opposed to the modern, it simply changes material. So it makes sense that the crone, once a forest figure, now appears in design studios. Her altar is now a drafting table lit by a monitor glow, and the mantra has shifted from chant to citation. Her return is less about wrinkles and more about autonomy. Her image has seamlessly moved from exile to export, and this wisdom has been edited for clarity. Call her the chaos matriarch because long gone are the days she is here purely to soothe systems. She is back to rewrite them.
What's happening?
The crone's secret power, though, has never been mysticism. It's comedy. Who else could survive centuries of misogyny and still laugh? Even Baba Yaga, that bone-gnashing witch, lived in a house on chicken legs, a walking satire of patriarchy. True crones are funny because they've transcended embarrassment. They've witnessed every human delusion and survived decades before anyone thought to call it cancellation. So humour, like myth, is pattern recognition with a punchline. Baba Yaga is arguably one of my most beloved characters in folklore. Her origins sit somewhere in the deep Slavic traditions, but she's never really stayed put. She's been rewritten, reimagined, reclaimed across centuries, and she keeps showing up because she refuses to be domesticated. The lore goes is that she lives in a house that moves on its own legs, flies through the storm in a mortar and pestle, and decorates her gates with human skulls. Her house on chicken legs likely traced back to Slavic forest burial practices, which are raised huts on stilts, but I read it as something funnier and more submersive. The thing is, she's not interested in making you comfortable. She may help you or she may devour you, and the distinction between the two is never entirely clear. She's one of those figures that hold both destruction and wisdom in the same hand, and she doesn't apologize for it either. Lindy Ryan's anthology, Into the Forest Tales of Baba Yaga, is one of the best contemporary entry points into why she endures. It's an all-woman horror collection, and what makes it work is that the writers don't sand her down into something more palatable. What these collection of stories understand, and I think what drew me to Baba Yaga in the first place, is that she's simply not just a witch in the woods. She's a way of thinking about what happens when women stop performing softness. If you're building your own reading list around this archetype, I'd also recommend Vasilisa the Beautiful, which is a Russian and Slavic fairy tale that underpins much of the Baba Yaga tradition. Short, essential, and available to read for free online. Every culture built a version of her. Baba Yaga stir in the cauldron of consequence. Hecate at the crossroads, triple formed, torches in hand. Leonora Carrington, one of my most favourite surrealist painter and writer, understood this decades ago. Her character, Marianne Leatherby, a 92-year-old protagonist from the novel The Hearing Trumpet, is a portal and far from tragic. In Jungian shorthand, she is the psychic editor, the one that integrates knowledge after the storm. Leonora Carrington's novel The Hearing Trumpet follows Marianne Leatherby, a 92-year-old woman who gets institutionalized by her family but dreams of Lapland. They call her a drooling sack of decomposing flesh behind her back, and she is parceled away to a retirement home run by Dr. Gambit, who attempts to control these women by pseudo-spiritual manipulations. But Marianne is not easily swayed, and through her adventures and misadventures discovers an ancient text about Donna Rosalinda, a medieval abbess who practiced alchemy and worked beyond the church's authority to seek the Holy Grail, which Marianne discovers belongs to the goddess Venus, not Christianity, as some legends may tell you. I highly recommend this read if you are open to stories without a standard beginning, middle and an end, and is also willing to embrace surrealist chaos. The audiobook, narrated by Sean Phillips, is also sublime. Her performance and character play really pulls you into the story. Now, what really fascinates me about this novel is actually the author herself, Leonora Carrington, who is a British-born surrealist painter and writer. She was raised in Lancashire by a strict Catholic family, and she found surrealism through her lover, the painter Max Ernst. And by the time she settled in Mexico in 1942, she had become one of the movement's most distinctive figures. The lore goes is that she spent her life subverting the Muse label. Andre Breton included Carrington in his anthology of black humour as one of only 2 women, and called her work proof of women's illuminism of lucid madness and sublime power of solitary conception. Translation: women make good art because we're naturally intuitive and crazy. He was praising her depiction of the witch specifically, but couldn't help making it about gender instead of her genius. Carrington's response: paint wrinkled crones doing magic in domestic spaces, reclaim the kitchen as a sacred laboratory, make biscuits, and overthrow the patriarchy. I'm still discovering more of Carrington's work, her paintings, her writing, even her real life. A couple of things I found quite interesting was that her Irish mother and grandmother told her that she was descended from the Sidhe, the fairy people of Irish mythology. As well as that, she also grew up in a Gothic mansion near the site of the Pendle witch trials. Her life reads as magical and mystical as her fiction, and I'm here for every bit of it. Fashion, once allergic to age, now performs reverence. Walk into any concept store or gallery in London, Seoul or Bangkok and you'll find her. She is not shopping, she is being studied, replicated and adopted as a personal curriculum. But to understand why she's trending again, look not at mysticism, but at design. Because where youth sells potential, she sells precision. Somewhere between the incense and the architecture book, she has become a brand position. We used to ask our elders for blessings, now we ask them for brand directions, and still we aestheticize wisdom but rarely integrate it. We put experience on a pedestal but forget to build the stairs. Because what culture does with its elders reveals what it values about continuity. Joan Didion for Celine, 2015. She's 80. The obvious read would be luxury brands hire older women to sell to older women. Maybe once upon a traditional marketing time, but I don't think that's what's happening here. Phoebe Philo, the creative director at Celine at that time, hired Didion, I think, because her face had become synonymous with intellectual clarity. The woman who opened the White Album with "We tell ourselves stories in order to live" and penned essays that have become institutional reads like on self-respect, originally published in Vogue in 1961, wearing a plain black turtleneck and giant sunglasses. There is no smile, and certainly, at least to my perception, no performance. The campaign did not explain itself because Didion didn't explain herself. The Crone, as it turns out, has an editorial voice, and this campaign made it flesh. Dame Maggie Smith for Loewe, 2023-2024. At age 88 or 89, depending on the campaign, the late Dame Maggie Smith brought the same energy she wielded for decades. Impeccable comic timing meets absolute refusal to suffer fools. Loewe's creative director at the time, and arguably the most hardworking man in fashion, Jonathan Anderson, understood craft as a form of devotion.
Ultimately, I'm married to my job and my business. They feel that I get in and out of a cab every day. I have like a staff of 45 at my house and I live in this but the reality is actually I smoke 40 cigarettes a day. I need Mars bar and I'm working 24 hours a day to try to keep it going. And my biggest thing at the end of the month is paying the staff. Like, that's my biggest responsibility. I'm married.
His collection at the house while he was there preached construction and technique over trends. And without words, Maggie's face says, I know what good work looks like because I've been doing it for 70 years. In this instance, the crone lives in the department of quality control. Michèle Lamy for everything. Rick Owens' partner, muse, and longtime collaborator, Michèle Lamy. At 81, her life reads like its own mythology. Studied with the Loewe, ran cult LA nightclubs in the 90s, worked as a defense lawyer, practiced boxing for 35 years, and designs furniture. She is fashion's blueprint for the crone archetype in its most recognizable form, which is to say curated to the very last detail, uncompromising, unapologetic, and entirely her own. The industry casts her precisely because she refuses to compromise her aesthetic. Heaven by Marc Jacobs, Rick Owens and Rimowa. FKA Twigs music videos. Front row at every major show, shot by every major photographer. The industry adjusts to her, not the other way around. So why does this matter? Well, to me, I don't think these campaigns are about aging gracefully, nor are they about representation. I think it's about the brands borrowing authority that they cannot manufacture. You can't fake decades of decisive work. You can't manufacture the face of someone who's been editing their lives for 81 years. Fashion has always sold aspiration, but what these campaigns sell is much rarer. Completion. All this is to say that the crone's essence has stepped off the tarot card and into the atelier. Her cauldron traded in for a garment bag and her prophecy for pattern making. The archetype has migrated from myth into material practice and the message is clear. Enlightenment now comes with immaculate lighting. Wisdom everywhere has become a form of design literacy. To age well now means to edit your life like a studio archive. Keep the texture, remove the noise. In studios, the best creative directors embody her energy daily, removing, refining, reducing, until only the essence remains. Less about cold minimalism, more about devotional clarity. She is the final cut. Where the hero expands, she refines. Where the maiden begins, she completes. To work like a crone is to make peace with deletion. In that sense, Margiela's blank label was never about anonymity, but about humility. A product without a name that still spoke volumes. The crone would approve. However, capitalism learns quickly, from embodied knowing to the aesthetic of wisdom. Now we have candles named after goddesses and moisturizers promising sacred glow. The archetype entered the supply chain and the chrome has become a luxury SKU. Gucci calls it alchemy. Loewe calls it craft. Either way, myth is now monetized. The sacred becomes design and suddenly even transcendent comes in limited editions. It's tempting to dismiss this as cynical, but maybe it's further proof that the old gods have simply changed departments. If fashion is our new folklore, then every collection is a myth retold in fabric, in fragrances, in leather goods. The question remains though, who gets to wear it? Which is to say that the global face of the modern crone remains overwhelmingly white, wealthy, editorial, while the grandmothers who built our cities stay invisible. In Bangkok, aunties run the markets with the precision of CEOs. Watch one arrange her stall at 4 a.m. Jasmine garlands hung by colour gradient, fabric folded by weight and sheen. Now, this isn't just good commerce, but curation that would make any art director weep. Some crones curate galleries, others curate jasmine at dawn. Both know what deserve to stay. They have been world building since stories were told on kitchen tables. We just never credited them in the show notes. Folklore, though, like institutional design, survives because it evolves. In the age of AI and synthetic abundance, the crone becomes a human algorithm. Slow, ethical, and unwilling to hallucinate. She fact-checks the oracle, and she reminds us that data without discernment is just noise. In Thai, we call our elder women meh, ba, yai, as a form of respect. And I've begun to think of every creative practice as a form of motherhood. But I think the crone is what comes after, the stage where you no longer need to nurture everything you create. You simply know what should live on. The Crone's reappearance is a sign that culture, exhausted by its own noise, is finally craving coherence. We've chased youth so relentlessly that maturity now feels avant-garde again. Her return might be less trend than translation, because in a world drowning in infinite beginnings, she shows us the beauty of an ending done well. Every story ends with her. When the villain finally stops running, when the village stops burning, when the archive closes for the night, she's there filing everything away under lesson learned. If the maiden is curiosity and the mother is care, then the crone is clarity. And clarity, in any era, is couture.